and I'm very pleased to welcome Hannah Peck, who's going to talk about Cool Earth's policy of supporting Indigenous people. Thank you.
So hi everyone. It's so wonderful to be here in Lancaster, joining you today and hearing the incredible efforts that are being made to fight for justice for people living in the Amazon. And thank you so much, Fiona, for giving me and Cool Earth the opportunity to be involved in celebrating Dom and Bruno's incredible efforts. Yes, it's really such an honor to be here. And as Fiona said, Dilwyn spent 30 years living with and carrying out research with the Ashaninka people of Cootabareni in central Peru. And when Cool Earth started, we had funds to help people keep their rainforest homes standing, but we didn't actually have a real idea of how to spend those funds. And it was actually Dilwyn that just offhand said, oh, can't we just give out the cash? And that's how our work began. And I also wanted to say, Sarah, that was absolutely incredible to hear the work that you and Survival International are doing. And I want to say before I go into cash for climate, this is really not relevant for uncontacted tribes, and everything that Sarah was saying in terms of campaigning and particularly for land rights and protection of Indigenous people, everything I'm saying is alongside that. I'll just make that really clear. Cool Earth is a climate charity, and we back people to protect rainforests and fight the climate crisis. And next slide. And yeah, so we concentrate on rainforests and keeping carbon locked into trees, but actually for a few minutes, I'm not going to talk about the rainforest. I'm going to talk about the people. And to do anything to solve the crisis of destruction of the Amazon and loss of all the rainforests around the world, we have to focus on the people who live there, as everybody here at this conference has been saying. And at Cool Earth, we work specifically with Indigenous people and local communities in the Peruvian Amazon and in the forests of New Guinea and across the Congo Basin. And we focus on these people because of the decades they've been written out of the conservation script. So ever since 1970, when the Save the Rainforest campaign was first launched, the conservation movement became very good at talking about the trees, the orangutans, jaguars, and capturing carbon. So good, in fact, that the fight against deforestation and the climate crisis now seems to be a priority for everyone. However, very little has been said about the important stuff, about tenure, about human rights, Indigenous land rights, discrimination. And so I want to think about the creation of protected areas in the tropics that have displaced people who live in and around the rainforest and who rely on it for survival. And think about the tree planting initiatives and carbon offsetting projects that have been made a priority over human rights and well-being, or the development of complicated climate finance systems which have raised billions of dollars but proven to be inefficient. And on top of this, there's very little funding that has gone directly into the hands of local people and Indigenous communities. And these strategies just have not worked. And then the people who live there, the 800 million, are the single best chance we have of preventing billions of tons of terrestrial carbon being tipped into the atmosphere over the next 50 years. And people living in the rainforest have the longest track record of keeping forests standing. And Sarah was saying that as well. Studies have shown that in the last 10 years, they've received less than 1% of the $600 billion invested to fight the climate crisis. And if the money does reach them, you can be sure that they are told exactly what to do with it by a people 1,000 miles away. So why hasn't the rainforest been saved yet? And we've been talking about it all weekend, but there's a bunch of reasons behind these failures. And one of these is evident, that mainstream conservation has ignored local and indigenous communities and key partners protecting the rainforest. They have been excluded from the negotiating table and excluded from funding. And do we all believe that people should have the right to a dignified life? I'm sure we all do. But in this top-down world where power, injustice, and money are so intertwined, when people have no cash, they have little choice. They lose their freedom and lose control of their lives. And this can mean many things. They lose control of land tenure, control of food security, control of their rights. And when people who live in the rainforest lose control because of external pressures, the rainforest suffers. And with the world's rainforests found in the poorest places on the planet, we need to recognize that poverty always plays a role. Poverty plays a huge role in the lack of control. Poverty plays a major role in deforestation. So imagine you live in a remote village, you face violence, your children suffer from malnutrition, malaria, and you find yourself with no cash, with no choice left. What would you do? Well, you have no other choice but to sell your resources, your forest, to the loggers, miners, narco-traffickers, and land-grabbing developers. But cash can break the cycle. With cash comes freedom, and the cycle of poverty and deforestation is broken. And when people in the rainforest have control and choice over their lives, people get to live a dignified life and get their rights respected. And rainforest stays healthy. It wins. And if rainforest wins, we all do. And this leads us to what if there was a solution that gave people control over their own future in the rainforest? So our mission from day one has been simple. It's to back people to protect rainforests. And it's Indigenous peoples, their lifestyles, their visions that will keep rainforests protected all over the world. And I want to share a simple idea that we believe will change everything. And that's direct, unconditional cash transfers. And this is the smartest, most scalable and most effective climate action this coming decade. I say that with a smile. And it's direct, unconditional cash transfers are exactly that. They're no strings cash for people living in rainforest. And before I get into the details, I can stress again that we're not new in the field of cash transfers. We've been providing cash to people in the rainforest since 2008. And we started with one village in Peru, and we now work with 30 villages across both Peru and Papua New Guinea. And that's about 6,500 people. In these 15 years, we've delivered cash in many different ways, through communal cash grants and cash transferred directly to households. And people have used it to address so many things. It's supported families in difficult times. It's built and improved communal infrastructure, and it's sent children to university. And it's allowed many communities to survive COVID. And each village, each rainforest is of course unique, facing different threats. Cash, however, works everywhere. Forest has the chance to stay healthy, but most importantly, people living there are not excluded from social, economic, or cultural gains. And as I said, this is not relevant for uncontacted tribes. We've got to this radical experimental idea after 15 years working with communities and with cash as a force for good. And of course, we've had our challenges. We've made mistakes too. We learned that 6 clans living very closely to each other in Papua New Guinea might look like a village, but they aren't. We've learned that local knowledge beats any clever plan created by those with a bunch of degrees and careers thousands of miles away. And we also became part of the bureaucratic system which imposes financial, legal, and in-country tax regulations on Indigenous community action. These learnings we wear with pride. They've led us to this point right here, right now. but we can do better, and we need to think even bigger. This is, has it changed? This is Kuta Vreni, which is where the photos that Fiona was talking about were taken. And in 2023, we will launch the first ever unconditional cash transfer pilot, and this will be in the Peruvian Amazon. And it'll be 300 people, that's a whole village, with a daily cash payment of $2.15 per person for the next 2 years. And in the Peruvian Amazon, this is enough to cover all 3 meals for a family every day. And we've been working in collaboration with communities, with Indigenous-led organisations and with external researchers to assess whether the money enables people to conceive their own vision of a thriving future in rainforest, and whether the carbon stored and hope that the carbon stays safe. I should introduce a few of the people that we've been working with. Over the last few months, we've been focusing on community consultations and negotiations to make sure that any project activities adhere to free, prior and informed consent, and ensure that we have done everything we can to mitigate any potential harm or ethical risks that may come from running such a project. And our priority is having open and honest conversations with the communities involved and ensuring that activity is led from the field. So we're really excited to be doing this. And this weekend's conference has shown examples of so much that people are doing to address the inequalities and injustice that people in the Amazon are facing. And we are conscious that cash is not the only answer to the rainforest and climate crisis, but it is an incredibly powerful tool to support the people who will come up with those silver bullet solutions. And now, more than ever, we need to act quickly. And we hope that this first pilot will lead to new relationships in the climate community and beyond, who will take this idea and ensure climate finance flows to Indigenous and local communities over the world free of conditions. And we have plans to start pilots in Papua New Guinea and the Congo Basin too, where we already work, and regions in which people are desperately calling for greater resources to fight the greatest crisis of all. And when just about every other approach to protecting rainforests has failed or lacks scale, we need to test this. It's fair, it's versatile, but it is risky, and we know this. But we don't have time. We are ready to embrace that risk. This is something we cannot do alone. Protecting rainforests comes with so many complexities, as you've heard throughout the weekend. But people like you doing what you can to fight for the rainforest creates radical climate optimism. And we all know that incredible things happen when the right people get together. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening.